Lions. Thanks for joining me again. We'll continue reading Wonder. So before we get started, though, let's go back to our plot diagram. And the reason why we're filling this out for a couple of reasons. Good readers are able to identify the important parts of the story so that they can fully understand the author's message, their purpose for writing, and it just makes the story much more enjoyable when you fully understand all of the important parts of the story. So the plot diagram is one way that we can do that. And another thing, when we're able to do this and kind of break apart a story and look at the different components of the story, it can help us to be better writers too. Because everything we're recording on this plot diagram, you could actually use this diagram as a pre-writing tool to plan out a story that you would write on your own. So let's go ahead back to our plot diagram. And today, we are going to start to fill out what's called the exposition. So exposition, that's just a really fancy way of saying the introduction to the story. You know, every good story is when you first are introduced to the main characters, the setting, how everyone is feeling in the story. So exposition sounds like a really big fancy word. You can almost hear the word expose in it. So when you see and hear the word exposition, you can think of the word expose. It's how the author exposes or introduces who the characters are, where the story's taking place, when the story's taking place, as well as what's called the climate or mood. Today, we're going to fill out the setting and the characters. We'll fill out the climate and mood tomorrow. So the setting, you probably have worked a lot with setting before. Let me just zoom in so this is larger so we can see it a little bit better. Here we go. Okay, and I think we can do this. Okay, so the setting is where and when a story takes place. So in this story, and you're always going to find the exposition at the beginning, the first few chapters typically. So we know this takes place in New York City. And it's interesting how the setting can really impact the events that happen. Because they live in New York City, we see them on the bus and the subway, and they walk to different stores. And remember, they had the interaction Julian did with Jack, that negative interaction when he went in the store to buy a pack of gum. Whereas typically, where we live, we don't really walk to the stores. Most stores, Trout's is nearby, but we typically have to get it in our car and drive somewhere. So the setting can really impact the things the characters do in the story, depending on where they live. So New York City is where it takes place. It's in a big city. But then also Beecher Prep is where a lot of the events take place. That is, of course, Augie's school that he started. And the other place where a lot of the action takes place is in the Pullman home. And remember, Pullman is Augie's last name. So New York City, Beecher Prep, Pullman home. One other thing about setting, people always think about setting as where a story takes place, but setting also has to do with when the story takes place. Now, this novel really seems like it could take place right now, in current days. Sometimes the setting can be from a long time ago. Like when I was little, my parents used to read Little House on the Prairie books to me every night. And because that story took place, I believe in the 1800s, the things, the actions, the events that took place were different than the events that take place now. Because in the 1800s, they didn't have the electricity or the modern day things that we have today. So in this story, the time frame is not very different. It's not noteworthy. Whereas if it took place a long time ago, or if it was like a science fiction story and it took place in the future, that would definitely be very important for us to identify. So we'll just say current day. Okay. Seems like it could take place currently. And you know what? For today, let's just stick with the setting. Obviously, there are some events that took place at Via's school, and a couple times, like they were at the ice cream place, the Carvel ice cream place, even a chapter was named Carvel. But because the majority of the story does not center around those places, we're not going to identify them as part of the exposition. When we're filling this out, we're only going to capture what are the most important parts. And really, Beecher Prep and the Pullman Home is where the majority of it takes place. And that is obviously all in New York City. And we could go through and list every place, but a good reader is able to determine important things from not so important things. So when you fill out organizers like this for your teacher, you're going to decide in order, what is the most important thing that I should note? And so by not including Carvel ice cream and those other places like that, or like the bus stop they were at before, you are showing that you can tell the difference between what's really important and what's minor, not so important. Okay, so that's exposition. That's one piece of exposition. And remember, exposition is just a fancy word for saying the introduction, kind of sets the stage for what you're going to be reading about in the story. Okay, tomorrow we'll take a look at the characters and then we'll tackle climate and mood. Okay, let's get to our read aloud. Remember, we left off not such a great place. Let's see, Augie went to his cave. He's hiding under the covers because he found out his sister didn't want him to go to her school, her high school, because then the people there would see him. And it was the first time she had been in a school where people didn't know about her brother. And so Augie, obviously and understandably, was really hurt. And then when we had left off, Via came into his room quickly. All right, let's get back to it. The chapter is called Goodbye. Augie, said Via, come quick. Mom needs to talk to you. I'm not apologizing. This isn't about you, she yelled. Not everything in the world is about you, Augie. Now hurry up. Daisy's sick. Mom's taking her to the emergency vet. Come say goodbye. I pushed the pillows off my face and looked up at her. That's when I saw she was crying. What do you mean goodbye? Come on, she said, holding out her hand. I took her hand and followed her down the hall to the kitchen. Daisy was lying down sideways on the floor with her legs straight out in front of her. She was panting a lot, like she'd been running in the park. Mom was kneeling beside her, stroking the top of her head. What happened? I asked. She just started whimpering all of a sudden, said Via, kneeling down next to Mom. I looked at Mom, who was crying too. I'm taking her to the animal hospital downtown, she said. Taxi's coming to pick me up. The vet'll make her better, right? I said. Mom looked at me. I hope so, honey, she said quietly, but I honestly don't know. Of course he was dead. Daisy's been sick a lot, Augie, and she's old. But they can fix her, I said, looking at Via to agree with me. But Via would look up at me. Mom's lips were trembling. I think it might be time to say goodbye to Daisy, Augie. I'm sorry. No, I said. We don't want her to suffer, Augie, she said. The phone rang. Via picked it up and said, okay, thanks, and then hung up. The taxi's outside, she said, wiping her tears back with the back of her hands. Okay, Augie, open the door for me, sweetie, said Mom, picking Daisy up very gently, like she was a huge droopy baby. Please, no, Mommy, I cried, putting myself in front of the door. Honey, please, said Mom. She's very heavy. What about Daddy? I cried. He's meeting me at the hospital, said Mom. He doesn't want Daisy to suffer, Augie. Via moved me away from the door and held it open for Mom. My cell phone's on if you need anything, Mom said to Via. Can you cover her with the blanket? Via nodded, but she was crying hysterically now. Say goodbye to Daisy, kids, Mom said, tears streaming down her face. I love you, Daisy, Via said, kissing Daisy on the nose. I love you so much. Bye, little girlie, I whispered into Daisy's ears. I love you. Whew, I don't know about you, but I need a tissue. Oh, my goodness. Mom carried Daisy down the stoop. The taxi driver had opened the back door and watched her get in. Just before she closed the door, Mom looked up at us standing by the entrance to the building, and she gave us a little wave. I don't think I've ever seen her look sadder. I love you, Mommy, said Via. I love you, Mommy, I said. I'm sorry, Mommy. Mom blew a kiss to us and closed the door. We watched the car leave, and then Via closed the door. She looked at me a second, and then she hugged me very, very tight while we both cried a million tears. Whew. Well, certainly didn't get better, but definitely things have shifted. It's always interesting to me how when something really sad happens, how it can bring people together. So just a minute ago, Augie and Via and Mom were all fighting. But then with Daisy being sick and needing to go to the veterinarian, the animal hospital, it really helped them all come back together. That's kind of what happens sometimes. Sometimes when things are hard, like right now we have the coronavirus, which is really difficult. But the one amazing thing that happens and, that's happening in the story and that we see that happens in real life is that when things get really hard, people tend to come together. And, it helps people just rally around each other and support each other. Okay, so let's read the next chapter, Daisy's Toys. Justin came over about half an hour later. He gave me a big hug and said, sorry, Augie. We all sat down in the living room, not saying anything. For some reason, V and I had taken all of Daisy's toys from around the house and had put them in a little pile on the coffee table. Now we just stared at the pile. She really is the greatest dog in the world, said Via. I know, said Justin, rubbing Via's back. She just started whimpering, like all of a sudden, I said. Via nodded. Like 2 seconds after you left the table, she said. Mom was going to go after you, but Daisy just started, like, whimpering. Like how, I said. Just whimpering. I don't know, said Via. Like howling? I asked. Augie, like whimpering, she answered impatiently. She just started moaning, like something was really hurting her, and she was panting like crazy. Then she just kind of plopped down. And Mom went over and tried to pick her up, and whatever, she was obviously hurting. She bit Mom. What? I said. When Mom tried to touch her stomach, Daisy bit her hand, Via explained. Daisy never bites anybody, I answered. She wasn't herself, said Justin. She was obviously in pain. Daddy was right, said Via. We shouldn't have let her get this bad. What do you mean, I said. He knew she was sick. Augie, Mom's taken her to the vet like 3 times in the last month. She's been throwing up left and right. Haven't you noticed? But I didn't know she was sick. Via didn't say anything, but she put her arm around my shoulders and pulled me closer to her. I started to cry again. I'm sorry, Augie, she said softly. I'm really sorry about everything, okay? You forgive me? You know how much I love you, right? I nodded. Somehow, that fight didn't matter much now. Was Mommy bleeding? I asked. It was just a nip, said Via, right there. She pointed to the bottom of her thumb to show me exactly where Daisy had bitten her. Did it hurt her? Mommy's okay, Augie. She's fine. Mom and Dad came home 2 hours later. We knew the second they opened the door and Daisy wasn't with them that Daisy was gone. We all sat down in the living room around the pile of Daisy's toys. Dad told us what had happened at the animal hospital, how the vet took Daisy for some x-rays and blood tests. Then she came back and told them she had a huge mass in her stomach. She was having trouble breathing. Mom and Dad didn't want her to suffer. Daddy picked her up in his arms like he always liked to do, with her legs straight up in the air, and he and Mom kissed her goodbye over and over again. And they whispered to her while the vet put a needle into her leg. And then, after about a minute, she died in Daddy's arms. It was so peaceful, Daddy said. She wasn't in any pain at all, like she was going to sleep. A couple of times while he talked, Dad's voice got trembly, and he cleared his throat. I've never seen Daddy cry before, but I saw him cry tonight. Phew. I had gone into Mom and Dad's bedroom looking for Mom to put me to bed, but saw Daddy sitting on the edge of the bed, taking off his socks. His back was to the door, so he didn't know I was there. At first I thought he was laughing because his shoulders were shaking. But then he put his palms on his eyes, and I realized he was crying. It was the quietest crying I've ever heard, like a whisper. I was going to go over to him, but then I thought maybe he was whisper crying because he didn't want me or anyone else to hear him. So I walked out and went to Via's room, and I saw Mom lying next to Via on the bed, and Mom was whispering to Via, who was crying. So I went to my bed and put on my pajamas without anyone telling me to, and put the night light on and turned the light off, and cried into the little mountain of stuffed animals I had left on my bed earlier. It felt like that all had happened 1,000,000 years ago. I took my hearing aids off and put them on the night table and pulled the covers up to my ears and imagined Daisy snuggling with me, her big wet tongue licking my face all over like it was her favorite face in the world. And that's how I fell asleep. The next chapter is titled Heaven. I woke up later on, and it was still dark. I got out of bed and walked into Mom and Dad's bedroom. Mommy, I whispered. It was completely dark, so I couldn't see her open her eyes. Mommy, you okay, honey? She said groggily. Can I sleep with you? Mom scooted over toward Daddy's side of the bed, and I snuggled up next to her. She kissed my hair. Is your hand okay? I said. Via told me Daisy bit you. It was only a nip, she whispered in my ear. Mommy, I started crying. I'm sorry about what I said. Shh. There's nothing to be sorry about, she said, so quietly I could barely hear her. She was rubbing the side of her face against my face. Is Via ashamed of me? I said. No, honey, no. You know she's not. She's just adjusting to a new school. It's not easy. I know. I know you know. I'm sorry I called you a liar. Go to sleep. Go to sleep, sweet boy. I love you so much. I love you so much too, Mommy. Good night, honey, she said very softly. Mommy, is Daisy with Grands now? I think so. Are they in heaven? Yes. Do people look the same when they get to heaven? I don't know. I don't think so. Then how do people recognize each other? I don't know, sweetie, she sounded tired. They just feel it. You don't need your eyes to love, right? You just feel it inside you. That's how it is in heaven. It's just love, and no one forgets who they love. She kissed me again. Now go to sleep, honey. It's late, and I'm so tired. But I couldn't go to sleep, even after I knew she had fallen asleep. I could hear Daddy sleeping too, and I imagined I could hear Via sleeping down the hallway in her room. And I wondered if Daisy was sleeping in heaven right then. And if she was sleeping, was she dreaming about me? And I wondered how it would feel to be in heaven someday and not have my face matter anymore, just like it never ever mattered to Daisy. Okay, I think this is a good time for a break. And the next chapter is called Understudy. Remember that Via is an understudy in the play. And what that means is she's kind of like the backup in case the person in the leading role can't perform for some reason. So we'll see what happens tomorrow and wonder. All right, guys, I'll see you tomorrow.